gap of Goose's death and how it affected Maverick. And so Tony at lunchtime, we had this really nice barbecue right down on the beach, and Jennifer remembered, yeah, we had steak and lobster, really nice barbecue. And so it's kind of really cool, right, being on the beach, and we had all this thing. Tony's up here with Tom and Kelly rewriting this vision. And so in your booklet, you'll see a couple pictures of him figuring this thing out. So he's trying to do it. We get this whole thing figured out. We shoot some of it. The sun starts to go over on the other side, and it just didn't work out. So then I got to thinking about right out there in the water, right where we were. You look about 1.5 miles out is where we did the Goose drowning dead sea. And so we used the Moore Cloud, which we got out of here, out of Fisherman's G Street Pier, and the Moore Cloud was a giant red tug. And it was a pretty cool boat, pretty big. And so we got up early in the morning, we took it out to G Street and sailed all the way out there. And Tom and Goose had practiced the Sea and Air Survival School that we had to do Sunday mornings to be able to fly the plane, first of all. And then they took it a little bit further for the water work when Goose was ejected and died. And so they had practiced with the parachute in the pool, and it all worked just fine. It didn't really have a problem. It's just a very shallow, I think you could stand on the bottom and still your head would be bottom. And when we were out there and we were filming it, the parachute was draped out and the mannequin was there and he's holding it, and the parachute got all draped out and everything was fine, and all of a sudden the center of the parachute started going down. And no one's really thinking that, he's bobbing in the water, and no one really thought that he's going down. And it seemed to me like it was quite a long time. The Navy divers said it was about a minute, and then they jump over and they pull him up, they cut him and pull him back up. And he was waterlogged. And there's a picture of that floating around the internet for a while because it was at the National Enquirer. So there's a guy at the National Enquirer wants to know the dirt about Patrick Swayze. I asked him for that picture. I said, I'll tell you something if you give me the picture. So he wanted the dirt. He couldn't find the picture. It's been gone. So anyhow, there was a couple pictures that were taken on the boat and then sold to the National Enquirer that night. And the next day, the production office is swamped with phone calls wanting to know how we killed Tom. And so Mr. Bill is like, well, we didn't kill Tom, we didn't drown him, it was just an incident. Okay, so we have this giant safety lesson. Okay, we're dealing with the helicopter, and we're dealing with the boat, and we're dealing with the parachute, so everybody pay attention on the boat and make sure that everything is safe. So that night, after the safety bulletin, one of the grips, we're docking the boat. The boat's coming in sideways, and there's like a 2.5 foot gap between the boat and the dock, and the guy it was a 14-hour day at the time. He couldn't wait, jumps off the boat, hit the dock, fell between the boat and the dock. And he just got slapped a few times into the dock, but nothing serious or anything. But he got a walking ticket the next day. So that was the only guy that actually truly got fired and never got rehired on Top Gun. Right. Although quite a few of us were fired and rehired the next day.
How far out was that scene? You were at the drowning scene? Was that
we were about 1.5 miles right out off that Point Loma coast right there. Just within the international limit, but not because we got to remember, all this was in 1985, this Cold War, and all that had Russian pilots on it. And so all these fisher boats out there had these giant antennas, like microwave antennas, and 90% of them were Russian boats spying on the naval warfare system. So they would wait for ships to come through, and they would document that, and they had instruments in the water to track the submarines. So off the international water. That's why there's a big huge sign that said no cameras, no nothing. They used to have, when it was active base, you could go to the cemetery. You had to stop at the first gate, show your ID, get checked in. But every exit off of the main road, there was an MP and you had to have the authorization. And they allowed no cameras. So there are very few pictures of that scene down there because of you couldn't have a camera, and they were pretty strict about that. And especially after the picture had been leaked about the near drowning, Mr. Bill banned the cameras from the set, and so the other pictures that you see are ones from the pilots. So there's a few pictures surfacing that people haven't seen before. That's pretty kind of interesting. What else?
How'd you get that job? Were you already in that line of work, or that was just...
Yeah, I was working for the government, and I heard about two guys talking about babysitting a guy in a restaurant, and it perked my ears up when they said they were going to pay like a lot of money. And so I said, how much money are you going to pay? And they go, well, we'll pay $1,000 a week, and I got $1,004 a week for doing that. And so I stayed with him and moved on. I had a good reputation for getting the difficult actors to the set on time. And so I worked very heavily with William Morris Television Agency and got assigned bad boys to get them to sets. And that worked out really well because William Morris was pretty good, and then Fox heard about it. So I stayed in it for 25 years. The last person was Paris Hilton. So in 2003, Joel Silver calls and says, need a favor, you still in San Diego? Yep, I need you to babysit a girl. I don't like women are hard. I can't go to the bathroom with them. There's a lot of problems. I can't go wake them up in the morning. It's an awkward situation. A guy I can do all this with, female, are much harder to work with. And then I have to get an assistant and another female cop. And so he wouldn't tell me who. Paris comes off the private plane, and I'm going like, oh my God. And so it took a couple days to get the ground rules down, but once the ground rules were down, she was fantastic to work with, except for the night that her house got broken into. And it was very interesting. About 20-year-olds all armed with kitchen utility knives and stuff like this, storming the house. I'm going like, y'all wait here. I'm the one with the firearm. I'm the one with the gun. And so it was kind of like Halloween. They all had knives and ready to. It was her ex-boyfriend that went in here and stole the video with the sex tape on it. So it was just a very interesting story. But that was my last, and I decided to retire and stay home. And I opened up a full security company, and we do everything from malls to high-risk movement of people. And I've got about 97 people working full-time right now, 18 cars that go out and it's it's a lot. But I like it. I can stay home at night, and so
Mine's not too bad.
and I get to ride my horse.
We are coming off of
principal person you've ever worked with?
yeah, we're late.
Kurt Russell is very cool. I liked him a lot. I did all of the Planet Hollywood openings. Swayze was a partner in the Planet Hollywood group, and so I got to go worldwide and do the Planet Hollywood. So I've met Stallone and all these guys, and I think the late night conversations at the end of the Planet Hollywood openings are extremely fun. But the best real actor guy was Patrick Swayze. He put his feet on, or his boots on, just like you and me. He worried about money, just like you and me. Not buying ostentatious stuff. He hem-hawed back and forth. He liked to fly. And back then we didn't have a real GPS system or a moving map. And Jet Maps made this moving map that you would plug into the computer and kind of use the plane's GPS, and it would show you where you're going. But Jet's also makes the books for your FP or for your landing fields, and it tells you all the information. So you have to buy these books to land everywhere. And this moving map was $800. And this is like 1993, 1994. And he talked about it for 3 years. Been flying all these 3 years, all the time. And he goes, I just don't know. I mean, it's $800. So what did he get for Christmas? Yeah, I bought it for him. I got tired of hearing about him wanting about $800. So, yeah, he was that type of guy. Both of his legs got broken on a movie we did, Letters of a Killer, and so I stayed on afterwards, taking him to the doctor's appointments and stuff like this. My well, I live up in the mountains, my well broke, and the old guy, if you listen to him, he's about $300 or $400. If you're not there to listen to his stories, he's about $1,000. So I asked Patrick if I could go down for the day, and Patrick's like on crutches. He goes, "We'll load up the Suburban with the tools. Let's go." And that's the type of guy I was. And so, you know, he drove down with me, and we fixed the well. So he was the type of guy that my dog died, he was there. We dug the hole. His dogs died. We were there. I dug the hole for him. He was probably the most genuine actor ever. Cared about what people thought, want to know what's going on. Let's see. The wackiest is probably Johnny Depp. He is, yeah, and that's why he's such a brilliant actor, is because he really doesn't know who he is. So he can't really be somebody, but he can be everybody because of the you know, not really knowing who he is. And so there's not like a baseline, and that's why he's brilliant. And so there's a lot of guys like that.
Which one was the most difficult?
Most difficult. Oh my. Well, I won't say that on camera, but yeah, there's some actors that are I'll tell you, there's a lot of actors that are difficult. It's hard to get them up in the morning, and it's hard to get them motivated, but that's the job. You know, get them up, get them moving, remind them that they're getting $10 million, $15 million for 3 months. It's a very hard job.
You're coaching them too at the same time.
Yeah.
Kind of like,
I'm a babysitter. Yeah, been in a few fights, been in a few scrimmages. However, it's more fun babysitting. Make sure they get there, not too much to drink that night.
Yes.
Protect their reputation. Yeah, stuff like that. So, yeah, there's a lot of fun parts to it. But on the movie, you're working 12-hour day, and so you get an hour in the morning to get ready, and an hour at night to get them out. And so I'm at 14, and then you'll usually stay or you go to dinner, so that brings you at 16, and it can bring you to 18-hour days. And in my day, we did 6 days a week on locations. Now they do five working days, and if they have to do a 6th day, then they pay you extra. I got my deals after I got smart were I get paid for a 7-work day because I always know I'm going to work on Sunday doing something. So and things have changed, but yeah, it's a lot of hurry up and wait. Well, I thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this. I'm sorry that we were running, but now we're going to go to the conference portion. You're going to enjoy that. There's some pilots that are there to talk, and we should have fun.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you. Push it. All right.
All right, cheers.
Monday,
July 22nd.
July 22nd, and it says right here, NTC. It tells what actors, what time, hair and makeup. It's a direction, a huge list of all these people in the back to get these people here so that we don't go over budget. Every day, Mr. Bill then reviews these, signs off on them, and makes sure that everybody is doing their job and within the dime of the thing. Very complicated because a map from a hotel, how to get to places. This is the actual crew map of the base. So this is what the base looked like back in the day, and they attach that to the thing and they show which buildings that we're supposed to go to.
Excellent.
So I thought the foundation would like that.
Yes, totally.
Mr. Bill's script from his script. So we had this made, and we had a cover made for it that is an exact duplicate of the working script. We thought that the foundation was
based off photographs that we have from one of the most accomplished aviation photographers next to Bio, sorry, but rocks. And it went to Hollywood, and it became a newspaper article, and then it became an idea, and then it became a bigger and larger idea. A larger idea that captured the mind and the spirit of Hollywood, that was produced by many, I mean actually put together by so many people, but the driving force is one of our guests tonight, and I'm going to give you his introduction in just a second. But basically, when you take that idea and you watch what's on the screen, naval aviators could look at it and go, that's not realistic, or that's not real, or they wouldn't do that. But they tried at the time to do the best that they could, right? And the production came out with Top Gun, which was a huge smash hit. And also an influence in a generation of young aviators like myself, who was 19 at the time. And when this came out in '86, so many people joined up that you could not get an aviation slot. As a matter of fact, my commandant of the Marine Corps, General Berger, was my recruiter. And he told me, hey, dummy, you're so damn lucky. And I go, why is that, sir? Because you're a 2.8 history dumbass, his 2.8 history major butt would be a truck driver if you had tried to join after May 16th of 1986. And I joined February. So very lucky. But the new movie is going to spark a whole new generation of aviators. Male, female, the whole 9 yards. It's going to be fantastic. But that all started in 1985 when they filmed this movie. And I'd like to start, first of all, with our premier guest, and he's going to be our end speaker, Mr. Bill Badolato. And so he's the executive producer of Top Gun in 1985. He was hired by Paramount to oversee the production of Top Gun, the cast, the crew, and the finances for the film. Mr. Bill, as he was lovingly called, is a second-generation producer. Everybody calls you Mr. Bill. He worked for Tony Scott to put this vision on film and make what we see and know today as Top Gun. Unlikely hit, as they said, and it turned into reality. It was just fantastic. So, Mr. Bill, folks. No, I'm gonna actually, I'll go through introductions, and you'll be the last. I'll give everybody about 10 minutes to talk.
Yeah, let me just say one thing. So Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer were the producers of the film. I just always like to make that clear. You know, just to, because they ran with the ball and got it triggered, and they had the first of a series of many tough miles. But I just wanted to make that clear.
You're you're so humble. You really are, a humble man, all the whole way up and back. Listen to you talk, it's just very humble, I love it. We have a real life Meg killer. All right, there are not many aviators in this world right now that can sit there and claim that they've got a star on the side of their aircraft. Admiral Pete Pettigrew, real Viper, who was the consultant for the film, right? Technical advisor for the film. And if you remember the famous bar scene, when Tom Cruise does his song, and all of a sudden she goes, hey, that was great and all, you know, living as a singer, and hey, Harry, I'll be with you in a second, and I'm going to save you from the older guy. Well, that was the older guy, right? And they loved him. They loved him so much.
Not only am I an older guy, but an older guy in a very, very old movie.
There are 6 old guys up here talking about a very old guy.
What's funny is you were probably 10 years younger than I am back then, and Tom Cruise being the young stud going, yeah, that saved you from that old guy. But anyway, F. Moore pilot and one of the original Top Gun graduates and instructors. He's the real Viper.
Not a graduate. I never went to the school.
Oh, you never went to Top Gun?
He's a fraud.
I was an instructor.
You were teaching them what you learned.
I started out as an instructor. So
So there's a difference, there's a little bit.
He went to Top Gun school over in North Vietnam. Yeah. He was OJT in North Vietnam. And next we have Commander Dave Bio Baranek, and Dave is a former CO, served in 3 different Tomcat squadrons, author of a couple different really great books. I highly recommend it. We're going to have those on sale afterwards. He's going to have some swag you can buy. But get with Dave after the whole deal and make sure you get one of his books. You won't regret it. It's probably puts you in the seat as one of the best books I've ever read in terms of a non-Rio in the back of an F-14. Probably the best. Hands down. No, it truly is. I kid you not. I'm not trying to get free book or anything. Next, I've got Jim Giambo. We got to ask how you got that call sign, Ray. And it says, how do I want to be introduced? I did not get arrested in downtown San Diego last night. Oh, no, I'm just kidding. Former F-14 Top Gun graduate and instructor, one of the movie's pilots and consultants. And Jambo has been on us. If you guys go back on our podcast we had May 16th of last year, we had all these guys on. And it was just fantastic behind the scenes, which they'll talk about as well. Bozo. All right. Lloyd Abel Bozo, accompanied by his daughter and wife, and former F-14 pilot. He was the infamous Buzz the Tower guy that won the toss, right? And also some of the scenes out there in the desert, and kind of exciting times watching you do a little loop-de-loop there. We talked about that on the podcast. It was a lot of neat photography, and he was able to. I think all of them were able to sit there and tell us some of the great stuff that they did with the cameras that they mounted to the aircraft. Lieutenant Commander C.J. Heaton, all right, one of the F-14 pilots during the film. He flew in Bozo's backseat, and many others filming much of the overwater scenes. He was also an extra in several scenes and worked with Tony on the cockpit dialogue. But what you don't know about Heater, Heater wrote a book, or it's a copy that I actually have back here. And Heater's book is probably the best book on photographs of the F-14 in action. So if you don't have it, definitely get it. But he was also one of the secret MiG pilots back in the day. And this is a program that was only declassified maybe a dozen years ago. Nobody really knew about it. The Red Eagles, these guys flew captured MiG 17s and 21s, and then they would do fighting against, the real F series, and it was just a fantastic program. Maybe he'll enlighten you a little bit on that as well. But anyway, big round of applause for all of you. As a F4 guy, and how did the Navy find you?
When Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer got interested in doing a movie about Top Gun, it occurred on a flight back from LA to San Francisco from a California magazine article that was written in about 1984, 83 maybe, by an Israeli writer. Another fact. Wow. And so they thought about it. Simpson was a very outgoing.
Big applause.
That, by the way, that's wrong. It says Top Guns. It took us a long time to convince Don Simpson that it wasn't Top Guns, it was Top Gun. Because he kept saying, no, it's...
Piper, in fairness, it's about 2 guys from Top Gun. So they were using Top Guns for awesome.
The problem is that got into Simpson's head, and we couldn't get it out of him. It took a lot of arguing to say, no, it's not Top Guns, it's Top Gun. And so anyway, they went back to Washington, D.C. to see if the Navy would be interested in doing a movie. And one of the guys they talked to was a guy named Dave Frost. And he and I had been instructors together at Top Gun. We were also in a squadron together, so I've flown with him quite a bit. He retired as a 3-star admiral and lives in Florida now. I talk to him usually once a month or so, and he's doing fine. And while they were talking to Dave Frost, they said, can you recommend anybody to be a technical advisor for the movie? And Frost said, oh yeah, I got this guy, Pettigrew, who's a good friend of mine, we're instructors together, and I got a phone number for him. Call him, he'll do it for you. And the next day, I got a telephone call, yeah, it's about what it was. It was a hand grenade. I was standing in a boarding area at the Phoenix airport on a flight, working flight. And in between flights, I got a call from scheduling saying, there's this guy on the phone that says he's got to talk to you. And which was the way Simpson was. You know, if it wasn't instantaneous, it was way too slow. So I got on the phone, not knowing who the guy is. He says, you Pete Pettigrew? And I said, yeah. He said, this is Don Simpson, and I'm from Paramount, and we want to do a movie about Top Gun. We're interested in using you as a technical advisor. Would you be interested in coming up to Paramount and meeting with us, going out to dinner with Tom Cruise? Well, I didn't know the guy from Adam. So I said, well, yeah, I'll come up there and talk to you guys. So I went home, made a reservation, went up to Paramount, spent the afternoon, the evening with he and Jerry Bruckheimer. Went out to dinner with Tom Cruise, who they were trying to talk into making the movie. And Cruise had long hair at the time. He had just finished the movie Legends, where it was a total flop. What? Yeah. He's right.
But he made Risky Business.
Yeah, he had made Risky Business.
Which was not a movie.
No, right.
He was very, yeah, he was great.
Actually, Risky Business turned into a cult movie. Well, Goose. Well, okay, the writers, the two writers that worked together for the first writers, they had about 3 different writers. The first one were Cash and Epps, Jim Cash, Jack Epps. Jim Cash lived in East Lansing, taught at Michigan State, and he taught, and he wrote together with Jack Epps, who lived in Los Angeles and taught at USC. They both wrote or taught screenplays. And Jack Epps was the go-do-it guy and make it reality. And Cash actually, I think, tended to put it on paper. And they'd written together, they had written about 4 or 5 screenplays that were pretty well done. And they were under contract to Paramount. So they started doing the screenplay. So Epps said, I'll come down, Pete, you show me around, and then we'll go a lot of different places. And I got to get a feel, because there wasn't any screenplay, there was nothing. They were just ideas that came out of Simpson's ideas were big ideas. Jerry Bruckheimer was the one that actually got them into being something in writing.
Right. So he called me Bio, and that stuck. And as we were talking a little bit earlier, I thought Bio was kind of neutral. And a lot of call signs are, embarrassing, or so I go, Bio, that's not bad. Anyway, I was an F-14 Rio And then I went through Top Gun class with a pilot who was talented, Jaws. And we were both invited to return as instructors. And if you look, to put the number of Rio instructors in perspective, I think in the credits of the movie, there's 16 people listed as Top Gun instructors and MiG pilots. And 4 of those are Rios. So, and that represented the staff at the time. So about 1/4 of the instructors were Rios. And it was very difficult. It was challenging. I mean, Jambo was there. You were there a couple of months before me, so you saw me there when I was a new guy. And it's very challenging to be a Top Gun instructor. I would say when I was there, it was a little bit not as hard being a Rio because I didn't have to do the 1v1 syllabus and stuff. To say, don't encourage me. If I had something bad to say about the Hollywood people, then I would be, I'd say it because everybody likes bad news and likes little ugly tidbits and stuff. But the people that I met up there and that I worked with, they were professional, they were committed to doing a good job. They listened to us when they asked our opinion, and so it was a fun experience.
Awesome.
All right, Jimbo. Hey, thank you. And I hope this will kind of evolve into this topical discussion.
Sure,
like
sure.
we're talking about.
Yeah.
So my name is Jim Ray. Jambo is my call sign. I was a Top Gun instructor for typical tour of duty that was about 32 months. I was there for 42 months. And some people say that's because I'm a slow learner. Before we go any farther though, 2 things. One, I can't highlight enough what it means to me personally to have this guy sitting right here. And of all the things that I know about this movie, if you look at that picture that's in California Magazine, from what I know, that is what inspired, truly was the spark for this entire thing, the photograph that this guy took right here. Beside the fact that he is a god in the fighter community. I want to follow up on something that Bio talked about in terms of the Top Gun experience, and that is, maybe with the exception of Heater, but every guy that I know that walked into that place to join the staff felt like he didn't belong there. Am I lying?
I was going to talk about that.
Yeah, didn't mean to steal your thunder, but it's true. And part of the reason why is because there's a very high standard that's set there. It's going to bring me to my next point. It's been said before, but I've got maybe a unique way of saying it, and that is that whenever I have discussions about Top Gun, I go back to an encounter that I had with Tony Scott. And anybody that on this panel that has had an interaction with Tony Scott probably learned a new way to put expletives together. Am I wrong?
No.
And as Viper was saying, he's a here and now pressure guy, absolute heart of gold. Well, things were going along, and we would storyboard. It's basically kind of like write a cartoon out of what the idea was for the air raid stuff. So we'd sit down, we'd have a brief, we'd have some ideas, and we'd say, yeah, you can do that, no, you can't do that. Well, it got to the point where a lot of this stuff seemed cartoonish to us. And I remember there's a real Hollywood guy named Greg Dishart. And yeah, I took some random notes, hopefully I'll get to them. But there's a couple of things that I want to say. First of all, that there's this impression that floats around after seeing this that fighter pilots are bright. I'm here to tell you, I don't want to burst your bubble, but fighter pilots are not exceptional. So let's look at some evidence. First of all, you have to put yourself through college, right? And somehow you have to have a university degree or go to an academy. One of them, right? Is that a building? University. Yeah, there you go. You can have a job with long hours, low pay, guaranteed family separation. Your workplace, at least half the time you're in the fleet, is going to be on a ship. And I think it was Samuel Johnson said the difference between being on a ship at sea and in prison is that on a ship you have a chance of drowning. Okay, it's better. So then, you're going to find yourself, and the end result of all this hours and weeks and months and years of sweat and is gonna be sitting on an alert, 3 o'clock in the morning, trying to stay awake, and you hear this launch the alert 5. And you have to wake yourself up, and now you find yourself in a 35,000-pound airplane, sitting on top of an armed catapult. You're chronically low on fuel. The catapult was built by the lowest bidder. And the very last thing they're gonna ask you to do before you launch off the front end is push the throttles forward and dump the equivalent of 4,000 pounds of gasoline or jet fuel on the spark plugs in trash cans on the back and go fling it off the front end. And then they're gonna have you come back and land on that same ship. Taking off, you don't have much of a load. It's going. Landing, you have to think about it. You got 2 hours to think about it. Oh, damn, I gotta go back. Day, night, bad weather, all. So my bottom line is, think pilots are right. Thank you.
I don't know where to follow. That's awesome. I guess we can move on to Bozo.
All right. Well, I'm Lloyd Abel. I'm more famously known as Bozo. We're talking about call signs. And there are worse call signs than Bozo, like Booger. You don't go flying with a guy named Crash or Smash. Right? So, anyway, the reason I got that call sign was I stood up. I said, Bozo sucks, I don't want it. And there I am. And that goes back to what Jambo was saying, that the pilots aren't that smart. I just said nothing. I might have had, straight. So anyway, I'm going too fast here. I do find myself once again as the lone F-14 guy amongst 3 or 4 adversaries. You know, they say never turn back in the fight once you've made the breakaway. You know, you got everything, all the lost decibels. You know, you're leading the fight, and you turn back, you always get shot. Well, I found myself again right here in the middle of 4 adversaries. One of those guys. The way the time thing works and pass it around, I'll say a couple things come into it. I was not going to be in the movie at all. Squadron came back the 26th of May off a deployment that we're talking about, Hayes Grain underway. And I had orders out of the squadron the first part of October, going from a C-duty squadron, EF-51, which I was in, to a short-duty squadron. And the squadron had a very energetic CO named Chuck Zollinger, and he was an admiral's aide before he got command. It doesn't mean much to you guys in total, but generally you go cockpit to cockpit to cockpit to CO the squadron. He was an admiral's aide, which was affectionately known in the business as a rope. So he was the admiral's attaché and a few other things, but he made command screen, so we'll leave that out there like it is. But bottom line is, he was a better admiral's aide than he was necessarily a project manager. But he knew a lot of people, high-priced people. And to go quickly, the squadron, he knew this Top Gun movie. It came out as a huge message about, the confit AEW impact, which was the Admiral in Miramar, that he's going to make the movie. And with that, these guys are not, they're painting a really good picture, but it's so in-depth. That whole point of time till I showed up as the F-14 aerial coordinator, my job was very clinical. I'll get the reason why I got in a minute. But it was all done when I got there. Their script, it was an involvement script, but they had 90% of it on the reps. And so when we came, they knew what the Tomcat wanted to do, and a lot of my job at the time was getting with Rat and Bio and these guys, and we worked out maneuvers, because in the filming process, and I'll say that right now, there's no CGI in this movie. So everything is hard filmed off Mother Earth, and an asset on the ground, the Learjet with Clay Lacey, with that periscope camera they had and everything, or off of what I call the camera perk, or Chuck here in the back seat of my airplane. That's a story I will tell here in a minute. But you have to understand Newton's, I don't know if it's Newton, but there's a law of physics that says that an object remains at rest until acted on by an outside force. So this guy's in the back, and we're going to do rolls off the carrier, right? You see him in the movie. So he's got a 60-pound piece of gear. And I saw that, and I said, we can do rolls. He'll talk more about that. But every time I did my roll, I heard boom. I knew what was going on back there, he was a very innovative guy. He tried to turn around and point the thing backwards and a few other things. We'll talk about that in that. But the point of it is, clinically speaking, I came to the project because the squadron, as I was talking about the CO, he had gotten money, and it's normally your sister squadrons. We had 51's counter squadron, which we had 11. And you always do things in pair. When you go to Top Gun with an air crew in the cruise, you get a crew from each different squad. So these guys go. Well, he had got money just for BF-51 to go to Red Flag, which is a fabulous exercise, air-to-air exercise, all-inclusive out in the desert. And so I'm leaving in October, and I was in the middle of about a 40-month tour myself, and I don't get that good deal, if you will. And it makes sense, because, I mean, I've had the good deals all along the way, and now I'm leaving, so it's better left, and there's no training value to me if I go to Red Flag, because I'm leaving. I'm not taking any expertise I gained there with me to go to the training command. So I'm left alone at the hangar with the troops they more or less don't want to take for various reasons. You can work that out for yourself. But I have a couple of excellent E-7s that are staying there with me. And John Simpkin, who's not here to protect himself, he calls up my squadron. They decided to move the filming up. And I kind of know the story behind that, but I'll leave that to somebody else to say. But they hadn't really filmed anything except generic filming off the Ranger, which is in the opening credits of the movie. It's a fabulous expose on flight deck operations. If you ever want to see all the different people that put things together on the ship and launch an airplane, how it all works, it's in that opening scene of the movie Top Gun. And the bottom line is that he calls up the squadron because they want to go ahead and film something, because by God, they can spend all this money and they've got the dialogue and they've got a lot of the ground acting done and all that. And I'm not there because, you know, one of the deals I work for myself is I'm there 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock or so, you know, because the squadron's not here. I'm in charge. And so I was there. So the chief calls me at home and said, hey, Simpkin over at the Admiral's office, you've got to get a hold of you. They want to start flying the movie tonight. So I call up John Simpkin and I say, Smegs, the squadron's not here, buddy. They're in the desert. You're not supposed to film for another 30 days. And he says, nah, we're going tonight. If you can't do it, then we got to move on to another squadron. Well, I knew my CO wanted to do it, so I called my CO. He's at Nellis Air Force Base with the exercise, and I say, Skipper, they're moving to fly. They want to do a tower flyby tonight. The first order is going to be the tower flyby, and they want it done tonight. And so the CEO, the skipper, says, well, I get back to you. So he calls me back about 2 minutes later, and he says, I can't do it. The Air Force has got all my planes tied up. We're stuck with those guys. You're going to have to do with the planes that are there. And there were a couple of flyable airplanes at the squadron. And so, and then he says something cute like, I'll get my guys there tomorrow. You know, and I'm thinking, I don't know your guys. But anyway, so I hung up the phone. I knew what I had hold of, that this was going to be a tower flyby at Miramar. Totally inside, by the way, I always make myself humble to the point to say that all the skill that I own, that I use in the movie and flew aboard the ship and all the work flies and everything else, this skill is shared with only a few thousand pilots, but they're out there. So I wasn't specifically more qualified or better pilot than any of these guys. I was in the right place at the right time, as you just heard. And so we also had a Rio there that he was getting out of the Navy, no less, and Mark Slicker. And I said, you know what we're going to go do? We're going to go get an airplane, and we're going to launch here, and we're going to go fly by the tower a couple, 3 times, and they're going to film us going by the tower. And he was beside himself. He said, you got to be kidding me. And I go, it's all ours, you know. So I'm thinking I'm going to get this one story. It's mine. Because the skipper said he's going to have his guys there. Okay. So in that process, Simpkin said I had to go down and find Jerry Bruckner, Tony Scott, the director. And there really wasn't any guidance. Everybody in my squadron knew what was going on. These guys were busy in the process of making the script right and doing all the ground sheet and stuff like that. Now the F-14 is getting ready to make a debut. And they said, we knew where the trailers were for the movie people. They're down there in Hangar 1. I'm down in Hangar 3. So we jumped in my car. I had a little Mercedes 2-seater rack top, and I take Slicker and we go down there and we pull up to those trailers. So we don't see anybody, you know, tumbleweed, screen doors, slamming. So we go around back, and guess who's in the back of the thing? I didn't know them then, but I know them now to tell the story. We had Iceman was sitting there, Val Kilmer was sitting there, and Goose was there, and so, Anthony Edwards, and so, Val Kilmer played the perfect, opposite to Tom Cruise in this movie. And that was his personality in general. When I went up there and said, hey, we're trying to find Tony Scott, he had the no kidding little Hollywood screen catching rays sitting in a chair. He looks up to me and he says, Tony Scott's not my problem. We're military guys, somebody asks you a question, and you get all the answer that you know completely, and you're on your way. Anthony Edwards, to his credit, a very nice guy, jumps up and he goes, hey, I think those guys are up there in the tower, control tower. So I said, hey, thank you very much. Anthony Edwards flew me a couple, 3 times, great kid. And that's a whole story. So I'm on my way down to talk about the tower flyby. So we go down to the tower and we go up, and I can actually do a little of this thing. I'm going to shoot through this thing. I have a little thing that I've prepared. I do talk a few times to some people, but if I need to get a little, there we go.
You're over to 10 minutes, but that's
All right. That's why I was in VF 51, just to show you. There's Barry Buckheimer and Ron Simpson. I dealt with them. I dealt with Tony Scott. That's what it kind of looked like when they're trying to figure out what they're going to do. Tom Cruise, that big toothy smile, he's still got that thing. Damn, I don't have one of those. By the way, it's a cheap plus for a real actor and my airline that I retired from. So again, 44 stories is what I flew. It'll go fast. I'll go through the chronology. There's the boats we used to get in there. And I won't talk about the things that were in the way. There I am. Okay, and that's what I'm talking about now. These are the guys that made the movie. John Simkin is not here right now. He was the Admiral's liaison for the movie, and then of course he now vice president of accessibility. He's the guy who was responsible for the big stadium that's in Los Angeles. And of course, there's Red Rivers and these guys try to look bad. They painted the F5s black, which is really kind of cool in a way. And then they all stuck together. It's kind of like that movie Slap Stick with Paul Newman. They wouldn't look bad. I think you guys rubbed mud on the van so the van looked shitty and all that kind of stuff to try to produce the part. So, and of course, he did share in the movie, I guess. Right where now he's the CEO. This is a high-priced job he has now. He's president of the Institute for Nuclear Development Operations. It's a vendor organization that advises the Navy on how to employ nuclear things. So my description, there's a bunch of it in there, but right now I'm talking about Tower Flyby. There's the good guys. That's the bad guys. In the movie, they're adversary, about Tom Cruise and Icelander going through the thing. So these are their adversary aircraft. These guys all flew right here. And then, of course, those are all the locations. This is kind of what it looks like. This little scene here, maybe if there's time at the end, we'll show this. This is the part I've talked about at the beginning of the movie that shows you flight operations, which is so good. So they graduated from that, but where I'm headed to this is Film Like You Train. I'm going to the Tower Flyby. There you go. So I go find my Rio and I. We go up the flights, 10 flights of stairs to get up to the tower. And on the way up, I can do this too. I'll show you. We pass. Never mind. It's one of those things. Once I get going, I get on this stuff. So anyway, we passed the actual guy who jumped copy on himself. Was in says the pattern of the school guy, but we don't know that he's not a real guy. We don't know he's an actor. He comes down with his shirt on, got command, and singing under all kinds of ribbons and stuff. So my Rio and I, we slam against the bulkhead because it's a senior officer coming down the platform, And as he went by there, I noticed he had blue jeans on. But anyway, I go up there. Tony Scott pulls out, and I think Pete brought some of these things. It's all little cartoonish things on there. And he says, this is what I want you to do. So I introduced myself, and he liked Bozo right away. He immediately started going, Bozo. He liked that. So you see the patterns full out there. Those things represent the little Tomcats, and that was kind of a cute deal too, because I had responsibility for that. Every single Tomcat, I call it the squadrons, I had them drag all their airplanes down and put it in the tower. So when you look out there and he says the pattern's full, look out on the ramp. Every single space out there has got an airplane on it. And of course, the pattern is full would normally mean the pattern that you're flying is full, but it works for the movie. So I get this, we go back, I go suit up, and the first airplane I'm taking out there, the wardrobe guys, Bill, we will talk about Mr. Bill. His name was Wade, wasn't it? The prop guy? Wade?
Mark Wade.
Mark Wade, yeah, great guy, I love that guy.
Great guy.
Yeah, he was unbelievable. The things those guys could do was just phenomenal. Anyway, he goes out and he paints the little logo on the tail, and he puts the logo on the nose number. And so I shake his hand and all that, we jumped in the airplane, we fired up. It had to be filmed in the afternoon because Tony Scott liked this Twilight kind of looking gold. So we had this little window to go, and so we fired up, we go out there, and this is one of those odd deals, it might not be appreciated too much by you guys if you don't fly, but Miramar always takes off to the west because the wind's always out of the west. It's the California coast, right? Well, this day, the wind was out of the east. And so we go down there, and it was kind of a warm day, remember that? So we power up the airplane down, we go about 100 knots on a roll, the motor starts going pop, 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 so I had to pull the throttle idle. And then if the engine temperature, if you will, stays high, we go ahead and shut it down, which it did, so it killed the airplane, thanks God. So I finished my board, went up high speed aboard, turned off, go back there, park the airplane, call Simkin and say, hey, I jet broke. And Simkin, these are JOs right here at the time, this is how the movie got made. It wasn't made by senior guys, it was made by junior guys like us. Simkin says, well, you got another airplane? And I go, yeah. And so no time to paint it, right? So it's an unpainted airplane, doesn't have a logo, doesn't have nothing on it. We jumped that airplane and we went up there and flew by the tower 3 times, you know? And there's a lot of little things that go with that. I'm gonna finish my story on this part. It was fun to do, make no mistake about it. I got to do it for all the guys that ever wanted to buzz the tower, without a doubt. There was a lot of things that I learned. There was a learning evolution flying anyway, just next to each other and all the filming that we did. And then they'll talk more about it as well. But you know, you get down there at a good, you know, a couple hundred feet or so, you drop down to about 150. The pattern that I had to fly, and I'd explained this to one of the things I talked to the tower, Tony Scott wanted me to go supersonic. And I go, you can't do that. If you go supersonic, the wind is going to break, you know, dogs are going to howl, you know, cars alarms are going to go off, you know, people are going to crash, just bad things. But I said I could drag the wings back manually, which you could in the Tomcat, and I can put it back at like 40 degrees, meaning, you know, almost to a delta wing configuration. And I can go by at like, you know, 300 knots or so and look fast, right? And the big deal, I had a constraint. Most airport traffic areas are circles, and you get a little 5-mile radius up to 3,000 feet. Miramar actually is truncated on the south side because Montgomery Field, other airfields down there. So I had right to the southern edge of the runways, and then I had to make a hard turn to the left. One of the issues was in there, and again, skills shared with all these guys, there's a whole lot of buffet involved with that turn because the wings are back, and so it's right at the nebulous part of stalling, so that the air is separated from the airframe a little bit. So that was my 3 shots, or lower down there 300 knots, and then get past the tower where they're filming, and then get the wings back out. And then I go cruising up there, and I got to fly over my house, over my cul-de-sac, which filled up more and more every time I went by. I went over Mira Mesa, which is the housing development just north of Miramar, and lowered the property value there. Miramar Road, which is the east-west highway there, adjacent to the north end of the airfield, and it was fun because the brake lights would come on and people were just all over the place. And then I'm scooting across the actual base itself, and I realized there are trees out here taller than I did. Who knew a eucalyptus tree could go to 250 feet? But they can. And so I was, oh shit, tree, oh shit. I could see the tower in the background, and I knew where I was going. So again, same skill shared by everybody. I just nestled the thing down there to a good solid, you know, 100 feet or so, if you will, and go by the tower, do a little planform, go scoot by, and that's the whole deal.
Awesome. Awesome. We're actually.
See how I did? Tony Scott, Bruckner there, they went nuts over it because this is something that you guys appreciate. Up till then, they didn't have any film of the Tomcat doing stuff. Now that they saw it, they understood this big beast roaring by the tower with all the thundering and noise that it made. They knew at that point they had to hit on it. They go, holy crap, this is going to be a hell of a movie. And they wanted me to be the guy, and I got to be the guy because they wanted one point of contact, and I got to be the guy. So it was Timken, myself, and Rat Willard, who was the also excellent Falcon. Us three were kind of the piece of our little communities to do it.
Blessed. Awesome. Floor is yours, sir.
Clearly, you're all big fans of Top Gun. And you didn't come all this way. I was just curious, did anyone come from out of state?
Oh, out of country?
Oh, wow. How many came from outside the U.S.? Anybody? Where from?
England.
England?
Mexico.
Mexico? Wow. Well, welcome. I'm really glad you came. Let me tell you a little bit about Top Gun, the school. I was in a squadron on the East Coast that won the S, the safety S, won the E, and in fact we won the Joe Clifton Award, best squadron in the Navy. My XO was a mid-killer like Viper, and the executive officer. And so I thought, okay, I'm a young JO. You probably knew Gene Rocky Top, obviously. So I'm thinking, here we are, BF-74, and here's all the rest of the fighter squadrons. And then I get to go to Top Gun. And I get there as a student, and all these legends are there. And I'm watching them carry themselves, lectures, briefing, debriefing, flying, and however Top Gun impacted you, multiply that by 1,000. And that's how I was impacted being at the school itself. It was incredible. There's a culture of excellence there that's just amazing. It's extraordinary. And to be a Top Gun bro, a Top Gun instructor, you kind of keep that mentality in almost everything you do in your life. So getting to see those guys in action was so humbling that I knew my squadron was here and Top Gun was about here in retrospect. So that's why some of the people later on when we talk about the movie and some of the differences, they probably don't care for some of the things because it wasn't the culture of excellence that we knew Top Gun was. But it wasn't a documentary. And I was a photojournalist and a marketing major and did some advertising. And I understood a documentary would be good, but we wouldn't be having one of these now. You needed a big hit movie, and they needed all sorts of stuff that Tony Scott knew how to do. So when Viper was doing the background stuff on this movie for years, at least 2 years, I knew nothing about it. I knew nothing about Top Gun, the movie coming to Miramar. And I was just the opposite of the rag, teaching people how to fly F-14s for the first time. We had 48 F-14s and 100 instructors and 1,500 enlisted guys. And I'm just going about my business when I bump into this woman with a Polaroid camera who said, hey, we're doing a movie about fighter pilots and we need some extras. And I said, I'm going on leave next month. And she said, no, I need your photo. And so she took a photo and I made a face so they wouldn't use it. And she made me do it again. And wrote everything down and I went away, never thinking I'd see anything about it. Didn't know anything about Don and Jerry or the fact that they explained to me what happened, which I'll talk about later. But I was on leave at home in Missouri with my wife right there, who actually worked at Top Gun as a contractor much later after I left as an instructor. And I get a call, hey, we're about to shoot. We're shooting tomorrow, where are you? We're trying to get a hold of you. So I had to go from vacation, fly back, and I entered their the classroom scene, so some of you remember. And that started a really good, long relationship with Tony Scott. He and I got along real well. Later on, we'll talk about it, but he, the first time I met him, I was sitting at my desk a few days after the Polaroid interview. And Tony walks in with an entourage. And one of the girls looked like Annie Lennox. You might know her. Different colors, spiked hair, all sorts of pierced jewelry, and very punk rock. And a number of other people. And Tony is just excited. And he goes, are you Heat or Heatley? And I'm like, yeah, who is this crap? And he goes, every photo we've seen on this base, no matter where we go, what hallway, the old club, everybody said they're your photos. And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, I want to buy them. And he pulls out a big wad of money and it starts going like this. And I'm like, Tony, put that away. If you want to get an active duty military person in a lot of trouble, just pay him or give him a gratuity. You'll be in big trouble. I said, I've got all the slides at home. You can look at all of them. You can see anything you want. So he had one of the entourage write down my address and phone number and called me later and said, we're coming over tonight. So I have to call Kaya and say, there's a Hollywood director coming over to our house tonight, and we didn't know what to do. And you bake chocolate chip cookies. So Tony comes over and I have this huge slide table and all kinds of slides out ready for him to see. And he's got a loop and he's looking through the magnifying thing, we're going through it. And he's talking about how he wanted to make Top Gun tension and testosterone. And he was going to film a lot of it in the bowels of the ship. He said, this is going to be a deep, dark movie on one hand with this tension. And he said, look at The Hunger. Go get The Hunger, which was a vampire movie that he made. And I looked at it, and it was dark, and it was moody. And I'm thinking, this is never going to work for Top Gun. So we talked about movies and actors and all kinds of stuff that night, and he invited my kids to, he said, you want to see us make a movie? And he invited them all to the set, which later on that happened. And I brought them there a few times until I realized I'm the only person that has any family on the set. And I might be abusing this. And they were letting him listen to the dialogue, they were letting him look through the camera, they were letting him do all kinds of stuff. So I stopped that, but they were heavily involved. And then a few days later, before I left, Tony said, I need to come back, I need some pictures for the movie. We're going to put them in the gallery, we're going to put them in the office and Top Gun. I'm going to make a real big one backlit for the bar scene. And so I said, come on over, and he came over, and that's when we talked more about blue sky, puffy white clouds, not in the bowels of the carrier, and how dogfighting was, and he had a million questions about that. And he picked out a whole bunch of slides and took them away and made all those prints, which ended up in the movie and in the bar scene. And then later, I'm walking out and Jerry and Don introduced me to Kenny Loggins, the singer who did the song. And since we were talking about music, Jerry, who had already told me about the magazine, I'll go back to that in a second. Jerry said, come in my car, I want you to hear something. So I go down to his car. I was heading to the tax trailer to run a mission. And so I'm hurrying up, and we're in his car. And did he have a Ferrari, Mr. Bill?
Mustang.
Yeah.
Yeah, they each had.
They each had a black Mustang. I think a black Ferrari too. Yeah.
They had Mustangs.
Piper says that
and
Mr. Ross.
not both of them.
Mr. Ross.
Don, but they,
Simpson cracked up that.
Yeah.
he did, but they both had, I tried to find him, I couldn't. Now I'm gonna find him.
The only reason I mentioned it, that when I'm sitting in this spectacular car, I'm thinking to myself, I can't believe they put an aftermarket cassette player. So Jerry Bruckheimer takes this cassette that Howard Faltermeyer did with a synthesizer, you know, the da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And so he puts that in and he goes, tell me what you think of this. They didn't have the guitar part, and it was all Harold Faltermeyer on a synthesizer. And I listened to it, and I said, that's pretty good. It was so memorable that I remember the whole time. When I went back home, my daughter's little electronic piano, and I taught her, and I played her. So for a year, before the movie ever came out, she would play that exact song. And it was amazing that that happened. And another time, I bump into Don and Jerry, and they go, let me tell you the story about the dentist office. So we're talking about them picking up this magazine, and they look at this picture, and they're going through the magazine, and they go, that's Star Wars on Earth. That's our next movie, right there. And so I said, man, that was lucky. It's too bad it wasn't the cover story. And Jerry Simpson said, no, there's a woman on the cover going like this. Don't buy this magazine, and don't look at anything in there. And it was a story about this woman. And he actually told me, he said, if you had had a picture of an F-14 in front of that, we wouldn't be here. He said, somebody else would be doing it. He said, so I'm glad that it was buried back here.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so, yeah, that was cool. And it would, a lot of other stories later with questions about flying, taking pictures, and the cockpit. Remind me to tell you about that, because if this is Tony, and here's the camera lens, and there's Jeff Kimball, the cameraman, I'm sitting right here with a microphone talking to Tom Cruise and Tony Edwards and all the other actors, and they're in a cockpit. And there's this giant track that's 14 feet of metal, and they've got a big Hollywood light on it that's just going around and around randomly. So the shadows in the static cockpit change, so it looks like they're flying. And then Art Joel, the pilot that went out and got a lot of video to look like flying, the one that died, that the picture's dedicated to. So they put that on a rear projection screen that was huge. I mean, it was like 25 feet by 25 feet behind the cockpit. So from this lens right here, it did look like they were flying, except they were kind of static. So what they did was they had, almost like an Egyptian pharaoh, they had about 6 muscular guys that could grab it, and then they would tilt the cockpit. So Tom Cruise and Tony, all the guys are moving around in this cockpit, and the camera's still, and this thing's making all kinds of racket going around, and it's really hard to remember your lines when you're doing that. So I was actually reading them the lines with the intonation that Tony wanted, so that they could just repeat whatever I said, and then that's how it ended up. In fact, one more minute to say how those lines got there. So we were doing that for a couple of days, and then we ran out of stuff. There was no more script. And they still had a bunch of film that Bozo and I did, and Jambo and a bunch of Top Gun girls did over the desert. And they put it all on this one piece of film. And it was all out of sequence. It didn't make any sense whatsoever. And Tony said, I got this big Hollywood writer coming in. I want you to help him figure out the dialogue for that film. So Warren Sparron comes in, and we sit down, and I showed him how to do the editing machine, and showed a little image of each thing. And all it was airplanes doing all kinds of things that we had shot. And he goes, these are airplanes. I'm here to do dialogue. And I said, yeah, all of this is airplanes. So the dialogue was on the radio. And he goes, I don't know what's going on. I'm supposed to be in Texas. He said, this isn't worth $37,000. And which I guess that's how much they paid him to do that. So I said, well, I'm a fighter pilot, and I'm a Top Gun instructor. I think I can figure it out. So he takes a yellow legal pad, and I look at it, the whole thing again, and then in my mind, like Jambo was talking about, I tried to figure out everything that was going on if they put it in sequence. So I would say Maverick, and he'd write Maverick, Cole, and I'd go, I got 2 bogeys, right? Unbelievable. And he'd write, I got 2 blind. And then he would write it out. And after an hour and a half, we fill out 3 pages of legal notes that he wrote down from what I dictated. So he goes, is that it? And I go, yeah. So we grabs the clipboard and we walk out of this editing room where we were into the Burbank hangar where we're filming. And he gives it to Tony. And Tony takes it and he looks at it, his eyes are getting bigger and bigger, and he goes, hot shit! And I used to tell him, every day I'd say, Tony, it's shit hot. If you want to say something that's really, really good and you're a fighter pilot, just say, it's shit hot. And he never got it through the whole movie. It was always hot shit. So he reads the first few lines, flips over the pages, and he goes, here, sit right here and read this to Tom Cruise. So I'm thinking, so this is how Hollywood works. I'm reading my lines to those actors, and Warren Spahn goes off to Texas, and I never see him again. So that made a big impression on me.
Warren really contributed greatly to the script, and they went to arbitration because he wanted to get co-writing credit. He didn't get it, but I feel part of my job is today is to really talk about the heroes and some of the unsung heroes and the people behind the scenes who really made the movie work because of. And so when the writing comes up, because I deal with writers every day of my life, and they really deserve the credit. It's a horrendous job writing a movie. It's just, you can never quite get it right. And so I want to start out, first of all, I've written down my notes, and if you'll bear with me, because there's a lot I want to cover. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about the people who made it, who probably don't know too much about, and the movie itself, which was the most extraordinary thing that ever happened to me. Anyway, one film critic wrote, the simplest way to sum up Top Gun is to declare the air scenes brilliant, and the earthbound seems grimly predictable. It knows exactly what to do with fighter jets, but doesn't have a clue as to how two people in love might act or talk. Another wrote, Tom